bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
All right, welcome to another episode Behind the Gear. And today we had a chance to sit down with Corey McNabb. He's the Director of Player Development with Hockey Canada. Great guy. I got to know him a couple years ago, going through the high performance stream of when Hockey Canada began certifying skills coaches. It was an awesome week. For anybody looking at doing that, you can find out all the information on the Hockey Canada website. But basically, Hockey Canada, about 4 or 5 years ago, started certifying skill coaches across Canada. So unfortunately, due to the circumstances right now with COVID, I'm a one-man show, and IT's at the bottom of my skill set. So we ended up starting this a little bit late, just a couple minutes. So we're going to jump into this interview, and this is kind of why I added a little bit of an intro to it, but we'll jump into it. Right now, we're just kind of finishing up talking about the Hockey Canada certifying skill coaches, and we get into a lot of cool stuff. We get into a lot of the decisions that Hockey Canada made over skill development and changing a little bit of the game for the young kids and stuff like that. And we talk a lot about skill development and how to get better and different things to focus on. So hope you enjoy the episode, and thanks for checking in.
And for anyone joining us right now, if you're on YouTube looking at this, unfortunately, I'm an IT idiot. So I just started recording the screen a little bit ago while you were talking, Corey. But just to recap quickly, we're talking about the Hockey Canada Skills program, basically, that Corey and his crew at Hockey Canada put together. And if you do want to apply, check out Hockey Canada's website. It's under the high performance streams, and it's something that runs every year. Hopefully this year, again, it'll be able to run. But basically a nerd fest for skills coaches and getting certified by Hockey Canada. And like Corey said, going there for a week and basically running, sessions and being involved. And I think the one thing that you said there is, as a skills coach, there's a big difference. And we kind of see it over the years. I think you've seen it better than anybody. There's different kind of sets of skill coaches, which is great. But at the same time, being able to adapt, being able to be quick on your feet, being able to change a session, because it does happen where you show up and maybe the coach changes it on you and says, hey, we really got to work on shooting, and you had a whole skating session planned, or you get there and there's 10 kids because 4 of them have the flu and 3 of them are gone on vacation, and now that changes your plan and what you got to do. But being around a lot of these other coaches or these skill coaches as well, I picked up so much stuff from other guys and girls as well, just on how they were teaching things or different techniques they used. And a lot of the same concepts. I think that was kind of the goal, right, Corey, is when you put this together, it wasn't necessarily that everyone get on this exact same page on how you teach stuff, but at the same time, make sure that we're teaching things that are 80% the same. Meaning, if we're teaching shooting or we're teaching crossovers, we don't have one coach in Manitoba teaching someone how to jump when they're crossing over, and we have another coach in Ontario trying to teach someone how to stay low and slide on their outside edge, or, trying to keep things a little bit seamless from, across Canada as far as how these skills are delivered, and then add your own flavor to it, your own drills and your own, technique, things that you want to add to it. But at the same time, we're kind of all on the same page and progressing the same way.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. We had no intention of coming in and saying, okay, this is exactly how you teach skating, and this is exactly how you teach shooting, because everybody moves different. Everybody's built different. One of the things I would say over the years that I've probably really learned and focused on is that as much as, everybody wants to skate like a Paul Coffey or a Scott Niedermayer, people just don't. And, we see it now in a lot of days for people trying to teach everyone how to skate like a Connor McDavid or a Nathan McKinnon, and people just move different. And so for us, it was really about looking at what are sort of some of the key fundamentals that are common amongst probably everybody, and more so in the skills that they need to have. And then how do we accentuate that? So, and that was a big part of it is, we kind of want to get the fundamentals down to like an 80-20. We don't need everyone to agree on everything, but if we can kind of get to that 80% point where we're saying, we all agree that this is important and we need to teach it, and here's some ways to teach it. Because, kids all learn at different paces. Kids learn in different ways. Some learn by just doing. Some learn by watching a good demonstration. Some can learn and watch it by picking it up on YouTube. So the way that everybody learns and how they progress through it is different. But our big goal behind this was to make sure that people that were out in the communities that we knew, and we said, you've gone through this process, we know you're certified, you're skilled, that we would have no hesitation whatsoever. If a minor hockey association calls up and says, hey, we're looking for, a skills person in the London, Ontario area, we say, Wayne's the guy to go to, because we know him, we see what he can do, we believe in his philosophy, believe in where he wants to go with this, and that's the person I would recommend. And so that was a big part of it, is again not trying to force everybody into sort of one stream of how things are done, but take the expertise and experience from everybody that came in and build a skating program, build a shooting program, build a developing defenseman program, so that overall we have all these people and resources across the country that are going to elevate the fundamental skill level of our coaches to be able to teach, but then also of our players to be able to perform. And then not only that, but do it in a game scenario. And that was one of the big things we talked about early on too, is there's a lot of flashy stuff online, of people doing some really skilled and talented things on their skates and with the puck. But at the end of the day, our belief is it has to be a game applicable. And that's probably the most important component that we looked at, was the skills that we're teaching and what we're teaching coaches. It has to be able to be applied to a game. It's great if kids can make all these YouTube videos and they're exciting and they're entertaining and they're great moves and things like that. But at the end of the day, they have to be able to be applied to a game. And that's one of the big things that we wanted to focus on everything is let's make sure that what we're teaching and what everyone is sharing are game application skills and concepts, so that actually as players move through the system, as they want to get on to higher levels, and whether it's junior or pro or wherever it may be, that they have that skill set, but they also need to be able to play. And that's a big thing that we hear from a lot of coaches at the higher levels right now is, hey, we have a lot of kids who come in with great hands, and they're great in practice. They can go around pylons all day, but when it comes to a game, they're just they can't play. And so that was one of the big things that we really wanted to focus on was making sure that kids can skate the game. Not everyone's going to skate like a Coffey or a Niedermeyer or a McDavid or a McKinnon, but they can skate the game. And we see all kinds of different players out there. If we were to look at the top 5 players in the NHL and their skating ability, they all skate, but they're all successful in their own way. And so those are some of the things we really wanted to look at.
Well, even if you look at a guy right now that's leading the league in scoring, if the NHL resumes, is Draisaitl, and his biggest knock, one of his biggest things was he's a big player, real skill, great hands, can't skate. And he's done a pretty good job getting around the ice and being effective and putting up numbers, obviously, right? So to your point, I think the game's changed so much. Even if we look back 5, 6, 7 years at what you were teaching or what I was teaching to young kids, it's a lot of the nuts and bolts are the same. But I know I've evolved my teaching, and I know you have, just as far as adapting to how the game's changed, how the speed is, how now we're adding so much movement on our shots. We're adding way more lateral movements to a skater, getting out of situations, getting into holes, things like that. And I think, to your point, everyone's a little bit different, obviously, and kind of teaching players to those strengths. And going back to what you said about game situations, I think that's my biggest pet peeve with any of the Instagram or the YouTube clips that are very flashy and catchy. And some of the stuff makes sense, but I don't think it's explained properly. And then you have parents that see this stuff and like, oh, great, I got to buy a tire for my backyard so my kid can put one leg up on the tire while he shoots pucks. And it just, to me, that doesn't, it could have some application to it, but it's got to have a progression to it, because number one, you're not going to use that in a game. And number two, why are you doing it? And what's the purpose moving forward? As far as how are you going to apply that to a game? How are you going to apply that to being in the slot and getting a quick shot off, And I think that's the lack. I think sometimes as parents get mesmerized by these sick clips and these really cool things of stick handling through 14 obstacles and shooting on net. It does have some application for sure, but then how do you progress from that to game situational stuff? You know what I mean? And for you personally, I know the last bunch of years you've coached young kids. You've kind of started with an Adam group, I believe, over the last bunch of years and kind of taken them up and then reset at Adam and taken them up again. When you're working with those young kids at that kind of 8, 9, probably 9, 10, 11 years old, what kind of higher end skills are you getting into? Because obviously you're working on skating and puck handling and shooting and things like that, but what other kind of high end stuff like deception and adding movement on the shot and different things like that? At what age are you starting to implement some of these things? Or is there anything that kind of comes to mind of things that you did with your team this year that was pretty fun and they kind of got it? And some people might look at you like, oh, it's too advanced for them.
That's a great point. I think, over the years, I've usually started with a group of kids, in novice or, the 8 and 9 year olds, and then stuck with him through Adam and Pee Wee up until the time they were 13, then start with another group and go for another 4 or 5 years. Cause I think the continuity is really important. But to be honest, I always even tell the parents this is it's a experimental type of thing too. It's a testing ground, because we want to really take philosophies and concepts and put them into play and practice them. So it's not just someone sitting at a desk somewhere saying, oh, I think we should do this. It's actually been tried and tested. And the number one thing I always said is, I don't care how many games we win. It doesn't matter. It's all about how do we make each of these players better. So every single practice, especially in the first half of the year, it was all on fundamental skating, puck handling, shooting, passing. And I think teaching, the concepts within it, so deception and fakes and change of speed and faking the shot before you actually shoot it and all those things, I'd introduce that at a young level. I think kids are inherently creative, and the more we can introduce it to them, and the earlier we can introduce it to them, the more time they're gonna have to work on that type of stuff. And so I found in my teams over the past is, we never had a great record, especially in the first half, but we just worked on the fundamentals, and all of a sudden we get in the second half of the season when now they can skate and they can handle the puck and they can pass and they can shoot, and you apply a little bit of organization or some concept stuff to it. We just see them really take off, and that's where you have to have some confidence in what you're doing, and you have to stick to your plan and tell the parents, it's not about the wins and losses. And I've been fortunate for the last number of years that all the teams I've had, we've ended up winning a lot more games in the second half than we did in the first half. And to me, that's where it really counts. And I'm not going to say it's because our coaching staffs are much better than anybody else, or we're way better skills coaches than anyone else. It's not. It's the fact that we put the plan together and we stuck to it. And we said, once you learn how to do this, then we're going to progress, and we're not going to move on and sort of leave skills behind that they can't do. And it's really worked. And over the number of years I've done it, I've really seen a lot of players go on to higher levels, to junior, to major junior, on the professional levels. And it all comes back to the fact that we had a plan on how to develop them, and it's worked. And there's no doubt that over, from the first group of kids that I had, 15 years ago to the ones now, we're doing some different things.
Yeah.
Kids, like you said, there are, I think overall from a group standpoint, more skilled now than they were 15 years ago. But the hockey sense, the compete level, all those things still have to be there. It's more than just a skill component. So it's adapting and trying new methods and different things, and changing a way that we've done a lot of things. And I think, in that regard, one of the biggest things that I've really focused on in the last 2 years is looking how we set up the drills, or how we start them. And traditionally we start a lot of drills, we got 5 kids in the corner and they come out and they do their move and finish the shot on net. And, that's great for repetition, but from a game application, that's not how you start. You're always starting from a face-off alignment. So even just doing little things like starting drills from a face-off alignment, and starting drills where you don't have a puck on your stick because it doesn't happen in a game. So now you have to go get it. So it's an opportunity to teach a lot more of the finer skills. So position before possession, stick fakes, head fakes, all those things before you even get the puck are a lot more prevalent in the things that I do now. And we're seeing it in games. Depending where you are on a face-off, everybody has a different movement on how they start the drill. Sometimes you might cross over left, you might cross over right. Sometimes you don't cross over at all, but it's all about trying to get position and the game application. So I find teaching those little elements of the game at a younger age has really, really helped. And we're seeing it, how it's affecting their gameplay, because the game is more like we practice now. And so, I don't really start any drills where you have, kids on the 4 blue lines in the neutral zone, and, you start with a pass all the way across the ice and things like that. That just doesn't happen in a game. It never happens in a game. So there's obviously going to be some drills that, have a purpose for warm up, or, getting the heart rate up and your feet moving and making passes. But I'm a big believer in every single drill should be game application as much as possible, and working on things from that way. So that's something that I've really adapted and sort of spent some time, I want to say researching, because researching comes just from watching games and how do plays start, how do plays develop, and then what are the skills required in there. So that's something I spent a lot more time on versus just sort of the pure skill side of it.
And I mean, when you do start drills like that, kids love it. Like if you start a drill with a player chasing another player and has just half speed and stick lifts them, and then goes in to make a pass or a shot, or maybe the drill starts off a rim, or like you said, off a face-off line, where a face-off, maybe it's a live face-off, or coach just off the face-off throws a puck in the corner. You got to go get it, make a play with it. Like those are things that kids like, rather than the standard just standing around, for sure. And I'm sure you've noticed it over the years. Definitely. One thing I want to highlight though, if you are coaching, so any father, mother out there that is coaching, and you've got a team, kind of like Corey, you were saying, as far as just working on the fundamentals, especially the first half of the year, it does get hard because coaches get impatient. And more than coaches, the parents get impatient because, well, we're not winning. And, we're in Pee Wee right now. Our kids are 12, and my kids should be on the top of the power play. Well, we don't have a power play because we can't make free passes. So we need to work on these things. And I think it's hard sometimes for coaches not to get sucked into that vacuum a little bit. We're like, man, we got to learn how to break out properly, rather than just sticking with their plan and saying, no, we got to work on our fundamentals. It'll come eventually. We're going to look like scrambled eggs at the start of the year, and then we'll add a little bit of structure to it as they get better, and we'll continue to work on those little fundamental skills. And then you see a huge improvement. But I think a lot of coaches kind of change their plan, if they even have a plan, change their plan early on just to basically appease the win-loss column instead of that development column.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I know I do think there's a lot of coaches who go into the season plan, okay, we're going to develop, we're going to become better. But, you go into your first 4 or 5 games in the season and you take a few on the chin or you haven't won any yet, they start feeling the pressure. They hear the conversations in the lobby and parents are starting to talk. But I think it's, again, it takes courage to develop a plan and believe in it and stick to it. And I 100% believe that if you have a good plan in place and you're willing to be patient and stick with it, the results will come at the end of the season. And ultimately, it does take some communication to parents. And that's a lot of the materials that we've tried to put out there from the Hockey Canada side to give coaches some backup and some resources to say, this is why I'm doing this. We're not working on a breakout in the very first practice. We're working on puck retrievals and making a good first pass and then be able to make a second pass, protect the puck, and all the different skills that come into a breakout. And, most breakouts don't fail because it's a bad plan. It's because of execution.
Yeah.
Some of the messages that we're trying to get in the hands of coaches so that they can help inform the parents on why we're doing this and what the end result is. We don't need to have a perfect breakout, in September. We need to have a good breakout in February or March when we're going into playoffs when it really counts. And so those are some things for sure that I agree with you totally on, that it's a hard thing sometimes to stick to. But I think if the coaches do it, they're going to find that they're going to have success and they're going to see the players continually getting better and better. And ultimately, you're still not, only one team wins a championship every year or wins the league or wins a title. But at the end of the day, to me, it's the kids who improve the most. And that's the biggest success.
Oh, for sure. And I think one thing too, I want to just highlight this because I think it's really important when coaches are looking at working on a breakout or a regroup in the neutral zone, but breaking it down into small, little digestible skills for the kids. So like you said, the retrieval. So get your forward and D, but most of your D going back behind their net or in the corner, picking up a puck, making a play, giving an outlet pass. And then adding your wingers coming down, opening up, and then adding a centerman coming in and supporting. But that's like, you can run a whole practice off one drill, just having progression after progression after progression. And next thing you know, a week later, now you've got somewhat of a breakout, because the kids have been working on their little pieces of that pattern in order to, successfully break the puck out of their zone. But if you, to your point, if you don't know how to pass the puck, or you don't know how to go back and retrieve a puck and shoulder check and make sure you have time and space, the execution is not going to be there. And then, you're not going to be able to get that puck out of your zone. So I think it is important for coaches to break it down for young kids so they can understand it and digest it. But don't get too caught up in the wins and losses. And I can't stress this enough because I think, you're bang on as far as, and if I can develop these group of 13, 14, 15 kids and they all get better, to me as a skills coach, or as a parent, as a coach, I think that's more important than winning a Adam championship and 5 kids didn't play and they end up hating hockey or don't want to play free anymore because they had a bad experience. I think it's important to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing with that too is when I believe from a teaching standpoint, it's important to get to a point where you're adding stress or you're adding pressure all the time. A lot of teams can do a perfect 5-0 breakout in practice. Well, that never happens in a game.
Yeah.
So being able to work on those concepts, puck retrievals when you have pressure. So now you're forced to put a fake on and be deceptive and make sure you know where the pressure is coming from. And so I think, those are some other things that are important to add in those types of things is to put pressure on, whether it's a coach or other players, just to add that game element. So now you're forced to make your decisions a little bit quicker. You're forced to look around and see the ice better. And those are all little things that, again, are going to help, systems, whether it's a forecheck or a breakout or whatever, to become more useful in a game as if you add game type elements to it. And I think that's another thing that sometimes is missing, is adding that game type of stress so that players even in a practice have to learn to perform on demand and perform at the situation. And I also think it gives coaches a chance to work on 2 things at the same time. So on one hand, you're trying to get the puck out of your zone, but at the other hand, you can also take the opportunity to work on angling and stick position and skating as far as forecheck concept goes, so that you're working on both at the same time. And I think that's where players really are going to learn the most, is when they have to read and react and read the situation and decide what to do based on what they see, not just because a coach says that you pass to this player who's standing still on the wall. Well, in a game, he's not always standing still on the wall. Sometimes he's not even there. So adding those elements are going to, I think, really accelerate and further the learning abilities of the kids.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, for sure. Now, like you said, you've been doing this for about 15 years as far as taking groups of kids for 3, 4, 5 years. And I'm big on, especially in our community here, if there's a really strong age group, like let's say, for instance, the 2001 age group was pretty strong in our area. Usually you look back on it and you see a group of parents that were really bought in, did a lot of extra stuff. Maybe they coached for a couple of years. They were ex-hockey players or played junior, and you just got a bunch of buy-in from the parents. And then every once in a while you get a gap year where you maybe get a group of parents, a group of coaches that weren't that into hockey and the kids were just good, but they don't really develop the way they probably should have. Maybe they gapped out on some coaches or whatever it is. But for you, you've had, a group of kids for a good portion of their minor hockey, 3, 4, 5 years, which is a long stint. Who are some of the players that you have had going through kind of your novice, Adam, Pee Wee, and then they kind of move on to play kind of AAA and things like that? But who are some of the guys that you've had through your years that have kind of gone on to play in the NHL? Any kind of names? I know there's a couple that ring out for sure.
Yeah, I think it's key. Like, and I would say at no time did I think that every single parent believed in my philosophy. And I do, yeah. But I do think over time you got to understand, like, you know what? Yeah, we win all our games in Adam. So we have more players from this team that are now playing at a AAA level when they're in bantam or midget than all the other competition that we faced. So they do start to buy into it later on, and I think maybe they look back and appreciate it. But I've had some great coaches that I've worked with over the years too, who had played and some who hadn't, but they're just good teachers. They know how to teach, and we all kind of got on the same page, and everyone had responsibilities. So I want to say it was more of a group effort than anything. And we had a philosophy of making sure that every kid got to play, every kid got equal ice time, everyone got a chance to be on power play, penalty kill. Rotated players all around from forward to defense, because I think you learn the game better versus being pigeonholed into a left winger when you're 9 years old. I'm not sure that's necessarily the best for kids as they go through the system, but I've been very lucky to have a lot of the kids who started with when they were 7 or 8 years old, and be able to go through the system and then still work with them in the off season on skills, even when they got into bantam and midget and even junior, from not coaching them. But I got some kids that I worked with that are playing in the American Hockey League right now. Some kids that weren't drafted but ended up making it there. Had some kids that were high draft picks. Brett Leeson, who's with Washington right now, is one of those kids who came through the system. So there's a lot. Robert Hamilton, who's in the Flames system. We got Dylan Hetherington in the Dallas system, and even spent some fair bit of time with some guys like Matt Dumba, who's in Minnesota, and things like that. But at the end of the day, to me, probably the biggest thing is that going through the system, these kids were all, they were good players at every age level. But the fact of the matter is that, now they're 19, 20, 21, 22. They still have a passion for the game. They still want to play it. They still want to play at a high level. They still want to try and get to as far as they can. So to me, at the end of the day, I know it might sound a little bit corny sometimes, but that's the biggest result for me, is that those kids love the game enough that they want to keep doing it. They want to keep putting in the effort. They want to try and compete, and they want to get there. We've all seen kids who were super skilled at 12, 14, even 16 years old, and then after a while, it just became a grind for them. It wasn't fun anymore, so they kind of dropped off, or they packed it in. And to me, I think that's the biggest thing that I look for is make sure that these kids love the game.
Yeah.
And even bigger than that, those players are talented, and some of them, they were to the NHL or wherever, whether I coached them or not, they just had the abilities. But I look at it now as some of the other kids who are, they're in college or university, they're 21, 22, and now they're coaching teams themselves. To me, that's almost
that's the best.
That they had a good experience in hockey, and they want to try and pass some of those things on. So yeah, I've been lucky to have a lot of great kids, a lot of great parents, a lot of great coaches to work with, and all along the way, I've always said, like, I've learned as much from them as they've ever learned from me.
Yeah,
It's just looking with parents, they know the mind of a 10-year-old better than I do. So getting a lot of advice from them on what works and what makes them tick, and what they want to do, how they want approach things to make sure that the kids are having fun. And so just every time you're on the ice, it doesn't matter who you're with, you have an opportunity to learn as a coach if you're open-minded, and you can learn a lot from players. Asking them questions and telling them what to do all the time is a great way to sort of build your own sort of process on what do the kids want to do. Yeah, I know they're going to say they want to scrimmage all the time, but change the way scrimmages go, make a small area games, small area skills, things like that. As long as they're competing and they're active and they're having fun and they see themselves getting better, they'll love it. The last thing you want to do as a coach is be in a situation where kids don't want to come to the rink, where it's not fun. They're doing the same thing over and over and over and things like that. So I think it's important to change it up. You work on the same skills but in different drills. And at the same time, if those kids are still having fun, they want to come to the rink and they're still playing, hockey when they're 30, 40, 50, 60, then I think as a coach, you've done your job.
Oh, definitely. And I think you said something there that I like and I started doing this a lot, even in some of the talks I give, I tell coaches to ask your players what they want to work on. And yeah, you're right. A lot of times it's going to be, I want to scrimmage, but when you say, no, like we can scrimmage later, but seriously, what do you guys like? Is there anything you guys want to work on? And I've done it many times and they almost set up the practice for you. Because they're like, I'd like to work on some one-timers, and I'm not really good at picking up pucks in my backhand, and and quick starts. Okay, those are kind of highlight things that kids like to work on. But there's your practice plan right there. Pick up 2 drills on each thing, add it to it, and there it is, right? So I think, and I don't know, as a player, for me too, I love when a coach would have dialogue with the team rather than being a bit more of a dictator coming in, and we're all a team here. And yeah, he's your coach, and you're going to listen to him or her, but at the same time, he's talking to you and asking you questions and, hey, what do you want to get better at? What do you want to focus on? And I think it is really important. And at the end of the day, it kind of does relieve some of that stress off the coach where, yeah, let's let the kids, run practice a little bit. We started something at one of the academies where unfortunately we got cut short just because of what happened, but we had groups of 3 kids. They had to come up with the practice plan. So they had to come up with 3 drills, because I find a lot of times as a player, it's almost like being a passenger in a car. You drive to work every day, that 40-minute drive with your buddies and take different routes. And then all of a sudden you got to drive one day and you're like, how do I get to work? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I've been a passenger for 10 years. I have no idea. So I think sometimes for the kids, you ask them, hey, can you come up with 5 drills? They've done thousands of drills and like, no, I can't come up with any drills. So getting them to think a little bit, getting groups. And it was really fun. We had one group present and it was awesome. Like, it was really good. And it's something that we'll do for the years to come, where they've got to do warm up. They got to pick 3 drills. There's 3 of them. Each player delivers 1 drill, but just having them a little bit more on the other side of it, because as well as I do, Corey, when you run programs and you bring out some of these young guys to help you in a program on the teaching side of it, you get off the ice after and you're like, how was that? Like, man, those kids don't listen. Like, yeah, you were the same way when you were that age.
Exactly.
Like, so they kind of get it a little bit. Like, so seeing the young guys that you coach or I coach, like there's a bunch here in London now that are young guys starting to get back into coaching. And I think it's so cool. Like, it's awesome. It's an eye opener for them a little bit too, but it's nice that they're giving back and they're still involved in the game. And clearly they had a good experience and they like it. And now they're starting to get back a little bit, which is really cool.
Yeah. And to that point too, another thing I found this year is working with a university team, doing skills with them 1 day a week. And a lot of times we're working on some of the same things with my 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
You're still working on deception and making sure that you shoulder check all the time and things like that. But the difference there is really the dialogue with the players is, I always tell them, like, hey, we're going to do this drill, but you guys tell me, like, is there something that we should add that's going to make us more applicable to your game situation? And the guys got really good at that after a while, saying, hey, I really like this drill, but let's add this. Okay, perfect. Let's add it in. And then I think they feel as part of the team, they're buying in and things like that. And sometimes, you run a drill and you think it's going to work great and say, yeah, that's
yeah.
So being able to use their feedback and ask them, like, hey, what do you guys think? And sometimes you can tell, we kind of did the same thing last week. I'm like, all right, and we'll try and change it up. And
yeah,
say, hey, that was a really good practice. I love working on that stuff. And it gives you, it feels good as a coach to hear players say that too. So you say, hey, we can keep building on that and working on it, and just always adapting. And that's one of the biggest things I find is trying to read off the players, and you can tell with their body language. What are some of the things that they really like this drill? When you always hear them saying, "Give me one more rep," they like it, so they want to keep.
Yeah.
And other times when you say, "Okay, we're going on the next drill," and if they're just eager as ever to get on the next drill, they're like, "Yeah, okay, maybe we need to shelf that one." And I think that's the biggest thing is you can't be afraid to try something. If it works, great, build on it. If it doesn't, hey, no problem. Go another direction with it. And to me, I think that's coaching. And I think players appreciate the fact when, they feel like they have some say in what they do, especially when they get older. 10-year-olds, they're going to say what they're going to say. But I think when you get into the minor midget, the midget AAA, junior, and all the way up to the pros, getting feedback from them is really important, because they're the ones at this stage. Even though we played, the game is different now than when we played when we were 15. So listen to those kids and some of the things that they have to say on what they're seeing and what they think they need to be able to get better at, I think can go a long way as far as building your plan as well.
Well, and I think the player, this age player compared to our era, is a lot different. I think they're a little bit more, they're more aware, of what other players their age are doing. Where, I mean, back in the day for you or I knew I knew the 20, 30 players that I played against in my area, and maybe a couple of kids at tournaments that we'd see that were really good on another team. But now with social media and spring teams and all this stuff, it's, of that age group, whatever age group you're in, most, if you're a high-end kid and you go to all these spring tournament stuff, every good kid in that age group, so you kind of have an idea of where you sit and what you need to do to get better, or how good that kid is. And so I think it does change the landscape a little bit. The kids are a little bit more aware of what they need to, most of them anyway, of what they need to do and what they need to work on in order to get better and be an elite player at their age,
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think, in some ways there's benefits to that. But I think in also some ways it hurts some players. And,
For sure.
where parents will see, well, this kid on the other team, look how good he is. You got to be as good as that. So then they end up putting him in 5 hockey camps and skating schools and shooting schools and stick handling schools. And before you know it, the kid's busy 7 days a week, 12 months a year playing hockey. And I'm not sure that's necessarily the best for him. So, but you're right. I think people, kids know. And with social media now, they'll see a player do a move and they'll try it. They'll go out and practice, and they're trying to do that stuff the next day. So I think that's what really adds to the creativity. And I always use coaching clinics. If you look at someone who's a really good skateboarder or a snowboarder, there's not a lot of coaches out there who are teaching that stuff because they can't do it.
Yeah.
Kids learn by doing. They're at the skateboard park and they see the best kid on the skateboard and they start copying those moves and they emulate what they see. Same with the snowboarders, and that's how they get good. Is just by doing. And so for a lot of that stuff, I think it's up to the coaches to not stifle the development, but actually encourage it. And let's not structure things too much. Let's give them a chance to go through and figure things out and sort of be creative themselves. And, when we were in Toronto there 3 weeks ago, I think there was a really good comment about, can you teach hockey sense? Can you teach hockey IQ? And Sebastian Bordelot had a great comment when he said, the number one way to teach IQ and hockey sense is first give the kids the fundamentals, so they can skate and handle the puck and pass without having to think about it. And from then on, when they don't have to think about it, now it's like, let them be free. Let them try things. Let them read. Let them react, and those types of things. I thought that was a really good comment on that type of thing.
Well, and I've used that a bunch the last little bit, like Spot, and I've quoted him on it because I think, he was speaking from personal experience with his son. I'd asked him, hey, like, how do you teach your son how to become cerebral and understand the game? And he said, honestly, just worked on his skating and his stick handling and puck handling so he could skate and puck handle without thinking about the puck or skating. And then you can absorb the whole game. And it makes sense. I mean, if you and I went for a walk in the woods right now and we had a hard time walking, we're just learning how to walk, we would not see that bird, that animal. We'd just be focused on the ground and walking, where we can both walk okay. We're not too bad. But now you're able to absorb everything. You can see everything. You can see different paths. You can see different animals, whatever that is. So I think for any parent out there, it is kind of relaxing a little bit, just working on those little fundamentals and working on, just that skating, that puck handling, trying to keep your head up. And it doesn't matter if the kid's 4 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old, 10 years old. I think that's the key to them. Number one, enjoying the game, and also understanding the game a little bit. Now on that topic, because it is always a hot topic, let's say my son does, or my daughter can skate well, puck handle well, keeps her head up. Is there anything else I could do to help enhance hockey IQ or help enhance their understanding of the game? Like, do you have any other kind of little tidbits for parents out there that could help their kids understand the game a little bit better?
Yeah, I think number one, I don't know if kids watch hockey as much anymore as what they used to. Kids used to sit down on Saturday night and watch a hockey game or whatever. I'm not sure they do that now. There's so many other activities, and they're on their smartphones and their tablets and things all the time. But I think to watch the game, and don't just watch necessarily the game for entertainment, but try and watch the game and pick a player and say, well, what does this defenseman do on this shift? What are the skating components that he has to do and different things, and start to look at those types of things. I think that's a huge way to develop some hockey sense and hockey IQ is not just always looking at a game from an entertainment side, but see if they can start to pick things out. And it's not like you have to sit down with your child and have them taking notes on games or things like that, but just watch hockey a little bit. And the other thing I think is in any situation, if you can a level of compete, racing, competition, stress, you're going to help to develop hockey sense. Because now, like I say, they're going to go back to retrieve a puck. If they don't look over the shoulder to see where the player's coming from, they're not going to be successful. And then the ability to fake, like how do I lose this player?
Yeah,
I think those are big things. Is having the defensive player or pressure or stress involved in all your drills. You're forcing them to make many more decisions in practice, which is obviously going to translate into games and get used to and developing habits of putting a fake on or deception and those types of things. So those are some of the big things. And then finally from the coaches, we need to have some structure in some, but also I try to finish every drill where the players get to choose what they're going to do. So for figure it out. So that every drill I do, don't go around this pylon to the left because I told you to go around the left. Maybe go to the right because that's what you see. And so I try to finish every drill off, even though if we are working on something specific where it's a player's choice. You might go left, you might go right, you might go inside, you might go outside, you might stop, you might start. But try and encourage them so they don't get in a habit of just going to the left because I said, well, you go around this pylon, then you go around this pylon, and then you shoot here. Maybe you shoot quicker. Maybe you peek. Maybe you do, encourage those types of things so that at every activity level, they're finishing off with them having a choice. And then again, when you add pressure or stress from behind or you add pressure or stress from in front, those are game-like situations where they're going to have to start thinking about what they're going to do one or two moves ahead. And so a lot of times it's just a matter of setting up a situation that allows them to make a decision. And those are big things to me as far as teaching hockey sense and IQ is let's not take the creativity away. Let's encourage it. Another guy well is Dominic Pittis, who has a great term he calls responsible skill.
Yeah.
And, let's give these kids all the tools. But as a coach, the art of it is now teaching them when to use it and why to use it and probably what's the best situation. So we've all seen the kid who loves to toe drag, and sometimes he'll have to toe drag the same player twice because he's so focused on toe drag.
Yeah.
The ice fast enough. But let's give them the tools so that they have the skill. But let's teach them maybe it's not the best idea to do it at your own blue line when you're the last guy back, or at the offensive blue line where you're potentially going to cause a turnover. Let's start building those types of things in. So the responsible skill is an element, I think, that's part of hockey IQ as well.
Yeah, no, I think I like that a lot. I like that term as far as it's got to be applicable and it's got to be, you got to teach kids when to use it, but they got to figure out when the right time in a game is, because as much as it's so easy to coach from the bench or in the stands as a parent saying, oh, hey, why'd you do that? I didn't see that guy coming. I had no idea. And then I got stripped, but now teaching the kids how to be, scanning the ice, protect the puck. But I couldn't agree with you more about adding pressure to drills. I think it's so important. I think it is really important to teach the skills and breaking it down, the technique part of it, all that stuff, obviously, and then adding layers to it. And then I think one of the final layers is adding that pressure and adding these kids playing a little bit with some static around them, with a little bit of pressure on them. And I'm sure you had this question a lot of times too, but how do I get my kids to be more competitive? Especially a lot of times in girls hockey. How do I get them to want the puck? How do I get them to – and I think the best way to do that is add some competition. Set up teams in your practice or have, a stopwatch game where you're under time, so you're under pressure that way, or you're racing for pucks, or you're battling one-on-one. And it adds that little bit of compete. And I think once players get in that mode a little bit, it's a little bit easier to do it in a game sometimes when they're practicing that way. And keeping that same energy that they have in practice translated into a game.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I think they start to see themselves have success. If you're doing puck handling drills and different things like that, hey, great, they need it for the repetition. But a lot of times, if you don't add the stress or the pressure, they don't understand where do I need to place the puck in order to keep it. If we just kind of do things, the puck is exposed. They're going down the ice, they're doing different moves and that. But if someone was chasing, they'd be able to steal the puck in 2 seconds. So those types of things are really good too for players to understand, because to me that's part of the game. Is okay. One, you want to get the puck, but two, once you have it, how do I keep it?
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of those things are important in that process too. Is not only it's about getting a puck, but now how do I hang on to it? How do I try and make a play? How do I become dangerous? Things like that. So those are elements that all come into it, I think, for kids. We've all seen the kids that are they're just ultra competitive. They want to win every little thing. And some other ones, they aren't quite built that way yet, but I think you can still, over time, teach them. They'll find their own intensity, and maybe it's different than, the player is going 100 miles an hour all the time and this and that. But I think if we give them the opportunity, and then they can see themselves having success, and put some little rules in some of those little games, it'll help, and they will become more competitive. But the only way I think you really become competitive is to truly have add something to it, turn it into a game, turn it into a pressure or stress, and then they learn from there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like that ultra competitive player is at one level. I don't think someone that's not competitive at all is ever going to get maybe to that level, but you can definitely push the needle a little bit and get them a little bit more involved in a game and chasing a puck down and trying to steal a puck. I think you can definitely push that out of players a little bit more. Going on that kind of topic, I know there was a huge change a couple of years ago with Hockey Canada when all of a sudden people were in an uproar, but Hockey Canada went from novice hockey being full ice to now, that IP novice age groups going from, cross ice hockey to half ice hockey to full ice hockey. I know there was a lot of static about that, especially in some of the bigger centers, because, it hasn't been done before. Number one, I didn't play like that as a dad. This is bull crap. This should never happen. This is not how we did it. I love it. I think it was an awesome. I think it was great for just getting players more touches with the puck and all that kind of stuff. There's a ton of skill stuff that goes with it, but behind the scenes on it, how did that all kind of go down? Was it something that was in the works for a while, and you guys were trying to kind of put it through, and then finally just kind of dropped the hammer and said, "Hey, we're doing this. We're pushing this through. This is for the betterment of hockey."
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the reality of it is, it started, when we developed the initiation program back in 1985, the recommendations were that the space should be played in a smaller area for young kids, and, age-appropriate modified games. And, why do we have 5-year-olds playing on the full-size ice surface? The ice was originally designed for, adults and their size and what they're doing. And so over the years, it was always a recommendation, but it was never something that was enforced. There's a lot of parts of the country that have been doing, cross ice or half ice hockey for a long time.
Yeah.
There's nothing new to them. They're finding like, all right, everyone else is catching up to us. But at the end of the day, when you look at, sort of a concept of long-term athlete development and age-appropriate training, age-appropriate modifying of games, you're starting to see, not only in other countries, but in other sports, a greater development of more athletes because of the fact of how they're learning at a young age. There's no parent in this country of a hockey player who puts their son or daughter in baseball and thinks that they should be playing on a major league size baseball field when they're 10 years old.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it. No one thinks that they should be doing that. But hockey, there's, as there's sort of the tradition and the mentality. Well, this is how I played when I growing up, so this is how it should be. But at the end of the day, it's been something we've been looking at for a long time. Making it more applicable to the age and size of the player. The stats are irrefutable.
Yeah, for sure.
In half ice hockey, I mean, we videotaped full ice games, we videotaped half ice games, and exact same players, and even tracking down to the number of shifts, number of puck touches per player, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
Comes to touching the puck, shooting the puck, shots on goal, goals scored, passes, all those types of things. People can argue all they want, but the stats show it's just not even close. Second of all, when you look at how the game is played at a higher level, the majority of the game is played blue line in offensively or blue line in offensively. And we've done stats, it's as much as 92% of the game, with only 8 minutes of a 60-minute game played in the neutral zone. So that means the rest of the game is either played blue line in defensively or blue line in offensively. So that tells you that the majority of the skills that these players need to be in a small area. So it's quickness, it's reading and react, it's those types of things. And so for young kids to be playing all their games at full ice, where traditionally we see, especially in initiation or novice or under 7 and under 9, you see, the player who happens to be the fastest skater gets the puck and they skate in a straight line all the way, and they get a shot on goal or they score. And then it's another face-off at center, and then someone from the other team does the same thing. The kids aren't interacting. And so at the end of the day, to actually do more development on the game applicable skills, the stopping and starting, the tight turns, the reading and reacting done in a small area is going to give those kids a much greater opportunity to learn those skills earlier on. There was an uproar. How are they going to learn offside? How are they going to learn icing? Kids will learn that in no time.
Yeah, for sure.
Quicker than they're going to learn how to play in a small space when they're older on. And so, there's a lot of pushback, but it's not something that was done hastily. It was, probably a couple of years worth of research into, using our member partners across the country and looking at what do they think and how can this be implemented? What's going to be the pros? What are going to be the cons? And at some point, we just had to do it. Every other major in the world is doing that as well. So it's not like we're going to be left behind because we decided to do this. In fact, in some cases, I think we're behind in some other countries because of the fact of what they were doing with their young players in the smaller space. And so it was you're going to have a transition period where some people are for it, some people are against it, some people are still going to be against it. But I think there's a lot more people who were maybe against it initially, but now they see the benefit and they're for it. It's really changed. The new people coming through the system, it's what they're going to know, so it's not going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
But the overall benefits are there for sure. So it's change, and change is never easy, especially in a sport like hockey, where it's so traditional in this country. We've seen other sports do it in other countries where, a lot of times with football in the U.S. now, it's called sevens. So they're playing
right
instead of, and then they're finding, we're producing a lot of quarterbacks now.
Yeah,
you're getting more time at a younger level to throw passes and things like that. And you look at what Soccer Canada is doing right now with their program. It starts as little as 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5, all the way up to 11s, because they're starting to progress and learning the fine motor skills that really separate the players out. Anyone can run down a field and kick a soccer ball 20 feet in front of you and run after it and kick it again. Those are skills that everybody can do. But it's how do we learn and teach the small area stuff? And that only happens by actually condensing the size of the space. So over time, and I think we're going to see it, in the next 5 years from that first group of kids who came through by playing their games in a smaller area, that we're going to see some benefits and some additional skill sets in a whole generation of players on how they play in small areas versus how we used to see it traditionally. So time will tell, but we're big believers in age-appropriate style of play, making sure that the kids are more active. And you've seen it, in 4-on-4 and novice half ice. When that buzzer goes to change, those kids are shot off the bench like a rocket because they right away. Whereas traditionally, if there's a whistle, you watch them come off the bench. It takes them 30 seconds to get over to the face-off dot and drop. You're wasting half your game time in face-offs and waiting for the puck to drop. So this is continuous action for an hour. So for parents who want their kids to get action, it's a no-brainer in my mind.
I totally agree. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's already started to shift a little bit. Like a lot of the younger parents now with young kids, it's normal. That's what you do. And I think over the next couple of years, it'll be, more just that's what hockey is, man. You start off cross ice, then you go to half ice, and then you go to full ice. And I think it's the way to go. I think that there's definitely way more opportunity for kids to get involved in the game and touch pucks, and the way more fun. And I saw it firsthand with my little guy. We played a little 3-on-3 cross ice tournament a couple years ago, and he's terrible, like worst player on the ice, but he actually touched the puck. He actually got a shot on net by accident, and he loved it. He had a blast with it. But how do you play full ice? You would have, can you imagine? There's 3-on-3 tournaments right now for novice age kids, and playing 3-on-3 full ice, it's crazy, And so I think to your point, as far as the long-term development plan for these kids, I think this is the best. This is the way to start it off for sure. And obviously, I think we'll see that kind of the fruits of this coming out in the next bunch of years as these kids are going through that whole process and then starting to play their atom and and moving on through their hockey system type thing. So now as far as on the skill side of it, because a lot of times I think a lot of the coaches have a hard time with it as far as like running a half ice practice and working with their groups or in small groups. I'm a big fan of working in small groups at all ages, no matter what the age is, and being able to have 5-6 kids and a coach is, I think, way more beneficial for those kids at times than having a big group running, full group practice sometimes. So do you have any advice for coaches out there that are working with maybe an Adam or a PWH team that do have half ice practices that have, are split up at center ice at the red line, and they've got basically half the ice with 12, 13 kids? What kind of advice would you give them as far as maybe, breaking the practice up or different things that they could do to help develop skill?
Live it this year. The majority of our practices are shared with another team, and we had half ice. So one of the things that we tried to do a lot to start the practice was work with the coaches of the other team who's on the ice with us and say, hey, let's use full ice for the first 15, 20 minutes and work on our skating and our puck handling. So, all the players are getting an opportunity to skate from one end to the other, and kind of the butterfly pattern where you get all the kids and lots of repetition. And so you have lots of coaches scattered out around the ice, and offering feedback or encouragement and what have you. So there's 15 minutes where you have a half ice practice or shared ice, but you're actually utilizing the full ice because you work with the other team. And it could be with if you're coaching Adams, it could have been a Pee Wee team or a novice team or whoever on the ice. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be the same level as you. You can still do the same things.
Yeah.
And build some camaraderie amongst the association, and the coaches get to know each other. And then after that is we just do lots of station work. You can still do puck retrievals on one side of the ice from, top of the circle in, with your fakes and your shoulder checks and things like that. And the other side, we might work on just from a forward side, retrieving a loose puck, and then we'd use the neutral zone a lot of times for some repetition in transition skating or, whatever it is. But we'd use probably 3 stations all the time. We always tried to get 4 nets. So we got the extra net for the goalies out there. So we had 2 goalies on our team. So we had, the net isn't in the crease where it is normally in a game, but you slide it over. So the kids are always getting an opportunity to finish with a shot on net. And it keeps all your coaches engaged because they know they have to run a station. It keeps your kids working on a variety of skills. They're always rotating around. And again, if you're doing game applicable skills, and we try and set it up. So, if this one is, we're going to work on a lot of stuff. Maybe we're in the defensive zone, so typically where you don't have the puck, but you got to get it back and then try and get out. So we try and design all our drills around that type of scenario where, okay, shot on net, puck goes to the corner, we got to get it. Now our job is we got to get the puck out over the blue line. So we did angling, a lot of small space stuff. But to me, it's far more productive working on that stuff because when they can do all those little things, your flow drills or drills that are going from one end to the other are going to happen.
Yeah.
Like on the majority of our games in at the Adam level, there's so little time spent in the neutral zone. Why we spend all our time in practice working on that?
Yeah.
We had some fun practices during the year where no doubt we work on some things like that, but it always come back to a small area skill. And what can I do in this situation to protect the puck or to try and get the puck back? So to me, I would rather have majority of half ice practices in a season than full ice practices.
Yeah.
Because if you have a full ice practice and you decide you're going to go into 3 stations, you look around, you're not utilizing the whole ice. You're still in a small space. So I think ultimately a balance is best. If you can get some practices and work on some of those things, but the majority of the skills should be done in a small space or a small area, then I think you're going to have sort of the best of both worlds. But in a lot of cases, all the practices all year for a lot of teams are shared ice or half ice. So just try and take a different approach to it. Think about, I can't believe we got another half ice. It's like, how can we make this half ice practice the best we possibly can? Add pressure to it, add stress. So now you have 2 players on every situation that are moving in all the different stations. And just adapt your drills to what happens in a game in that smaller area and how do you benefit from that. And I think once coaches get in the mindset that a half ice or a shared ice practice can be a benefit, then that's half the battle.
Yeah, for sure.
Complaining and saying, "Oh, we got another shared ice." Take it to the positive side. Look how many more puck touches, how many more passes, how many more reps they're going to get at things. And if you take it from that standpoint, I think once you start to develop sort of a routine that you think works for you as a coach on how to set it up, whether it's 3 stations or 4 stations or 2 stations or whatever, you'll find you'll start to get creative in how you do things, and you'll leave the ice more often than not happy with how that half ice session went.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that drives me nuts is for players, realistically, I mean, a lot of kids at 9, 10, 11, they don't really care if it's half ice, full ice. As long as it's fun, it's interactive, they're enjoying it, they're shooting pucks or whatever they like to do, they're doing it. What I get really annoyed with is when the parents come to the rink, like, oh, another half ice practice, and that car ride to the rink, and now that kid hates half ice practices. It's all, I think the big thing is, and like you said, make the most of it, man. And if they come into the coach like, hey guys, we got half ice practice, it's great. We're with Team Gray, they're awesome. We're going to do warm up with them, and then we're going to do a bunch of station stuff. We're going to do shooting, one timers, whatever it is, right? Kids will love it. And yeah, is full ice practice nice? I agree with you. I think it's good to have a mix, but if you are stuck with an association because of costs and things like that, where you do have a half ice practice, make the most of it. And I wanted to touch on this too really quickly, and I want you to let us know where we can find this stuff. But there are a lot of really good free resources out there through Hockey Canada of stuff that you can get as far as drills, practice plans, half ice, 6 stations on the ice. I mean, you guys have pretty much done this for a lot of years, obviously, and have a ton of resources. But if I'm a coach and I just got handed a team for next year, oh man, here we go. And I've got, 13, 12-year-olds, and I got half ice practices. Where are some spots I can go to try to find some good resources for drills, for maybe making a practice plan, looking at some videos, things like that?
Yeah, I guess the number one is on our website, we have an area called Drill Hub, and there's hundreds of drills on there. It's all free to access. You can see a video, you can look at the drill diagram, you can see the description, and there's drills on there for every age group. And coaches go on there and they can you don't have to do anything. You can just look at the drills, or you can sign up so that then obviously once you've created a profile, and then you can start to create practice plans, and you can also send the practice plans out through an email link or copy the practice plan and send it to other coaches. So now they'll get to see, here's videos of the 5 drills we're going to do today. So that's one. The other one is any coach who goes to a coaching clinic gets a copy of our Hockey Canada Network app, which is a mobile app that has thousands of drills and practice plans on there. So every coach who goes to a clinic is going to get one of those. And you get, for example, there's a skills manual in there for the Atom age or the under 11 age, as the name is going to be called starting next year. There's 32 set practice plans in there. So technically you don't have
That's your season. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Follow it. And, over time, some coaches follow every practice as they're laid out. And after a while you get confident. You'll start mixing, matching drills from different practices. And on the app, you can create your own. And essentially the app is a free download. For those who don't take a coaching clinic, you can download the app for free. And not all the content or all the functions are available in the free version, but there's lots of information on there that a coach can get as far as drills and videos. And then if you wanted to buy it, it's $23 a year. And one app is good for an entire team. So for example, on my team, I obviously have the app, but I just send a link out and invite all my other coaches and parents to it. So I can share everything. So I design the practice plans, I can send it out, and they all get a chance to see it. So when you look at that, it ends up being just over $1 a player for a year. So it's, we try to keep it as inexpensive as possible. So on one hand, we have, our Drill Hub, which is free, and lots of free resources on there. We provide the app, which is a ton of free information. But for some of the premium functions, like creating teams and sharing practice plans and things like that, there's a charge to the premium version. But we provide it at every coaching clinic. And then for the ones who don't take a coaching clinic, there's an opportunity to get the premium version. But we're really just trying to get the information out there. And I think in reality, as we get more and more people using it, and this is not, obviously the cost is going to come down. There's a cost for us too, and we have to pay the
sure. Yeah.
And there's updates, and there's bandwidth, and there's all kinds of costs that go to putting out there something like this that goes on a mass scale. So, but over time, obviously we'd like to be able to reduce the cost and get it down to as low as possible. So that's just a resource that is there, and it's more than just drills and video. There's information on there on nutrition and sleep and hydration. So there's tons of information on there for parents as well. And all that type of stuff is free to access for parents at any time. And we keep it updated constantly. Every week we're putting new stuff up and highlighting new information depending on the time of the year. So it's a great resource. We do have a lot of people using it for sure. Ultimately goal, I'd like to have a coach every team in Canada.
Yeah.
On a daily basis. But like you said, there's lots of things out there, and more experienced coaches probably will go through and just look for drill ideas versus using it to, set up, 58 practices for the year. They're going to go through, and they have drills that they all like to use. Everyone has their own favorite drills and setups, but they'll go on there and find, I like this drill, I like that drill, and they'll start piecing things together. And again, it just comes to a point of coaches being able to get to the comfort level of designing the drills and putting him in the proper sequence. And the other thing that I'd say we've done that probably isn't in any of the other resources that we see out there is we've added a Team Canada game clip to almost every single skill.
Yeah,
so now
cool.
coach can see where is this applicable. So why am I working on this skating drill? Well, we have a game clip to show, well, here's exactly where this skating skill happens in a game. So it's a good way to try and sell and get buy-in on the fact of, if it's happening in a game, we should be working on it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's fun for the kids to see that too, if you are sharing it with the kids or even parents. Man, why are you doing this drill? Well, if you checked your app that I sent over to you, this is when it does happen a lot in a game. You may not see it right now, but this is when it happens. And I think it's a really good way to get players and parents and even coaches to buy into what you're teaching or what you're doing for sure. Yeah. Listen, buddy, I really appreciate your time, man. I know we all have a little bit more time on our hands right now, but I really appreciate you taking the time out. A couple quick little quick questions here. Who's one of the players, or you could have a couple, that right now in the NHL, I know not right now, but this year or over the last couple of years that you really enjoy watching? If you can name one or two and the reason why. So is there anyone that kind of pops in your head that you like, if he's on, you're going to like, I'm dialing in on this one.
Yeah, you know what? I love watching the guys who make plays. And, McDavid's obviously exciting. Draisaitl does some great stuff. You have Mitch Marner and you got Austin Matthews in Toronto, and you have, the shooters like Ovechkin or Stamkos and Laine. I love watching defensemen who are creative and can make a good first pass and are deceptive. So trying to think of one or two guys that stick out is hard. I mean, I still love watching Crosby.
Yeah.
I think he plays the game the right way with the puck, without the puck. It makes the players around him better. In that regard, like I said, your top scorers in the league, your McDavid, it's almost if you don't watch the game, you're worried you're going to miss some spectacular play that you're going to see. But there's a lot of young players coming in the league that are really good. So to me, I just love watching players who I think are, I don't want to sound cliche and like the 200-foot player, but the guys who just make the right plays all the time, make the right play at the right time, a little chip off the wall when they should. And I kind of, that's how I watch my games now, is looking for the little things.
Yeah.
For all entertainment factor of it. For me, the entertainment kind of more comes down to your international competition, the World Juniors or under 18s or Olympics or World Championships. Those are more, I tend to watch that stuff a little bit more for entertainment than your average NHL game. But the NHL game, I'm looking for players who make good plays. But I think different players for different reasons. I love the explosiveness of McKinnon and a guy like McDavid, and I love the overall game of Crosby and and even international players like Austin Matthews does some great things on the way he shoots the puck, and Patrick Kane is still a guy who's a force, who's been in the league for a long time, but every year he's in the top. So I think there's a lot of great players, and I like to really look at players and try and take the best of each of them and try and develop that into the young players that I'm working with.
No, I agree. And I think to your point, like I like watching hockey, and I like watching like little simple things like how a guy pulls a puck off a wall, or how, a guy like Marchand, even as much as, you love him or hate him, he makes plays and he works hard.
Yep.
And he strips pucks. And, but I agree with you. I think for a lot of players and even parents, just appreciating what players do, not necessarily translating into that highlight reel goal, but how that player moved the player's stick by throwing his eyes one way and making a pass the opposite way, or found a hole through a skate or over a stick to make a pass and see a guy streaking the other way to make a play on it. It's cool when you kind of look at the game a little bit differently and have a bit of a more of a cerebral look at it and looking at how plays develop rather than just that big play that happened, whether it's a hit or a shot or a goal or whatever it is. I think it is cool to look at those little skill things for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then one, I know this is kind of a weird time because obviously we have no hockey, we have no sports in general, obviously, or no nothing. So it is hard to like kind of talk about this kind of stuff. But if you had any predictions this year, if games were going to go on and things were going to go on, did you have a wagon? Did you have a team that was going to win, or a team that you thought might win the cup this year? Did you have anyone that you kind of were in hopes of, or were you just kind of looking forward to enjoying the playoffs? I know being from out west, you're probably Calgary or Edmonton.
I live in Calgary, but I am an Oilers fan at heart. I have been ever since I was a kid. But I think it might be Tampa's year. I know last year they ran away with the regular season and the points, and I think that's a team that learned a lot. They're still in a good position right now, but I think it would have been Tampa. And the West is a little bit more of a crapshoot. I mean, I think you have some good teams. You know, St. Louis is at the top again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wouldn't have surprised me to see Tampa St. Louis final. Yeah. But having said that, you know, the way it goes, you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. You know,
for sure. Yeah.
Oilers, Flames, Jets, Vegas. You know, there's a lot of teams that could get there, but I think it would have been a good series. And you know, you can't leave Boston out there. Obviously, the top team in the league right now.
Yeah, they're always scary.
They get in. You never know what's going to happen with them as well. But I would have probably been leaning towards a Tampa St. Louis final.
Yeah. Now, coming back to reality here, do you think that the NHL is going to come back? Like, I'm skeptical. I don't think it's going to. I think seeing how everything's kind of getting pushed and everything's kind of getting moved back a little bit. Now, I think if Trump has his way, we'll just go back to normal tomorrow and just kind of roll with life and the coronavirus. But do you have any thoughts on kind of the NHL coming back, or are you kind of just kind of wait and see day by day?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, from our side, we're involved in a lot of the conversations on the decisions that Hockey Canada made to end the season and go from there. But there's so many more dollars involved and a lot of moving parts. It's a different story. My gut feeling is I think this is going to go on probably longer than what people originally thought. You know, it's already beyond the 2 weeks where most people say, "Oh, you're going to go home for 2 weeks and we'll come back." It's going to be longer than that. So I think they're going to look at every scenario on how to bring it back. But I think at the end of the day, the 2019-20 hockey season is going to have no Stanley Cup winner.
Yeah, which is crazy.
I think there's going to be so many moving parts, and then not only if they do bring it back, what's next season going to look like? You know, are they going to play for a Stanley Cup in August and then start the season again in September? No, they won't. So that's my gut feeling, is that at some point they're just going to have to say, look, the health of citizens and fans and players and everyone is going to be more important. And ultimately they'll probably end up making a call that says this. But at the end of the day, who knows? They're going to get creative with what will work with building availability and things like that. And the others looking at the same thing. You know, in order to maybe try and preserve next season back to normalcy, they might have to just totally call things off now. But at the end of the day, I think everyone there are a lot of smart people working on this. They're going to find every scenario and look at it. And I think ultimately their number one choice is going to be, let's figure out a way to make this work.
For sure.
Advanced playoff format, where maybe the rounds are all best out of 5, or your first round is going back to the old days where it's the best out of 3. Who knows though? But they'll find ways to make it work if they possibly can. And then ultimately, I think in order to probably start the season, next October under as much normalcy as possible, if there'll come a date when they'll say, unfortunately due to the pandemic, that there's going to be no Stanley Cup champion crowned in the 1920 season, and we'll go from there. Yeah,
no, for sure. Well, listen, buddy, stay safe, and I really appreciate the chat, man. It was really good to finally get you on here, which is awesome. So, stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll definitely be catching up soon for sure.
Absolutely, and like I say, we all got a little bit more time on our hands than what we normally do. So, if any other topics you ever want to get on and chat hockey again, love to do it.
Well, the one thing I might do is even doing a little bit of a round table, even with like 3-4 guys, just kind of chatting about some different stuff. We'll get a couple of specific topics, maybe email out beforehand, then we can do a quick half hour, 45, just kind of chatting with a couple different guys. It'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun for sure.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
All
I
right, buddy.
appreciate you doing this, and keep up the great work.
All right. Thanks, man. Take care. All right.
To kind of raise that bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps,
Huge strides in the performance.
that I might not be the player I am today.